we are up to page 54. We are on the next chapter, which is a chapter called Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha in Hebrew means go. 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 Okay? Now this is like a shift right now in terms of what we've seen. Because let's just review a second. We had from Adam, there are 10 generations to Noah. Okay? 10 generations to Noah, and the people are bad, really bad. And God wipes them out in the flood. Then there's 10 more generations, and people are still not good. It's 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. Abraham is born in the 20th generation of the world, 1,948 years from the creation of the world. That's when he is born. Okay, in the 20th generation. That's the story of Abraham. Now, we got to talk a little bit about a concept here. So in our class, we have people who are Jewish, people not Jewish. So understand, and people that are Noahides, people that you got to understand something from a Jewish perspective. A person, as I mentioned before, who's not Jewish does not need to become Jewish. We believe that every person who acts righteous has a portion of the world to come. It's a very, very different idea. We don't believe that you say you have a person to be this way or that way. As long as the person acts righteous and good, they have a portion of the world to come. So I want to ask you a question, and this is a very hot topic right now. People on Facebook are going wild already. There are thousands of people screaming about this. They know what I'm about to say. So you've heard the concept, the idea of the chosen people. And whatever people maintain, they say, well, the Jews are the chosen people. And then some people say, well, they were, and they lost it. And it's not. The Jews say, no, we didn't lose it. But everyone agrees to the concept of the chosen people. Now, I personally have a little problem with that, as most people have a problem with that, because we live in a global world, and we want to understand that everyone, is wonderful, is great. So, how do I deal with the concept of saying there's a chosen people when it seems so ethnocentric? It doesn't seem right. How do you deal with that? How do the Jewish people deal with that subject? Anyone have any ideas how we could explain that? Yeah, what do you think?
Chosen to set an example.
Chosen to do what? Okay, chosen maybe to do certain things, maybe chosen for responsibilities. So let me explain how this works. It has to do right now what we're up to. And this is why we say that a person who's not Jewish need to become Jewish. If he keeps the laws of righteousness, they are like the high priest of Israel. That's a great, great thing. But here's the way history worked. When God created the world, he said, everyone who wants to find me can find me. Okay? Everyone who wants to find me could find me. I am accessible. And the world's open. Whoever wants to find me can find me. Now, but as we said, we had Adam and Eve. They were prophets. They were very righteous. But the people got worse and worse and worse. And we know this is true historically, because if you look at archaeological findings, you'll see people were idolaters and they were barbarians. So people went down, and instead of when God was accessible in the early years of the creation and was open for everyone to see, people became worse and acted bad. And that lasted for 10 generations till Noah. And then another 10 generations, and the people of the world were so negative that God said, you know what? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this. Adding people here. You don't want the job of finding me and being my representative? Okay, I'll give that job to whoever wants it. Now, who wanted that? Who wanted that? That was Abraham. Let me explain how this works. You had creation, and people might not realize this, but early on in the creation, already in the third generation of creation, people started worshiping idols. We mentioned this last time. And first, the way they started doing that, so the third generation already in creation, people started worshiping idols. You mentioned how that started. What happened was people said, okay, there's a sun and a moon. Sun and the moon are like the emissaries of God. We got to thank them also. Thank you, sun. Thank you, moon. You moon, you're great. Sun, you're great. And then after a while, they started only relating to the sun and moon and forgot the source of that. That's the third generation of the world. And what happened was at that point, and this is not brought in the text, so you don't know this, but there was a tsunami, I guess it was. It says the Atlantic Ocean flooded, and a third of all the people in the world were killed. This is very early on in the beginning of creation. A third of the population was destroyed. And then God waited 7 more generations. And now you have Noah. And Noah's, in his generation, people were awful. Okay? The first generation were idolatrous. The second generation, you know what they did? They had illicit relations. They were just like all over the place. Had no control over themselves. All right? That was the second generation. God brought the flood. Then 10 generations pass, and it's 2,000 years. Right? So Abram was when the year 1048, 1948, when he's 52 years old, 2,000-year time period ends. And at that time is what we talked about last week. That was the time of the story of the Tower of Babel, where the people try to fight God. We talked about that last week. And that sin, believe it or not, is strange. You know what that sin is called? That sin is called tantamount to murder. Can anyone tell me why the sin of chasing God and saying, we don't want you, we want to have our own world, why that would be like murder? It's weird. Why is that like murder? How do you define death?
Finish. I mean,
What changes in the person? The soul leaves, right? Physically, the heart starts beating or they stop breathing. But when we look at them, all of a sudden they don't look the same because the soul left. So death or killing someone is causing a separation of body and soul. What the generation of the Tower of Babel wanted to do was cause a separation of body and soul. The soul of the universe being God, and they wanted to say, we're just going to do our own thing. So you have 3 generations now that for 2,000 years we're just getting worse and worse and worse. Okay, 1 generation idolatry, 1 illicit relations, and then 1 based on murder, which are the 3 cardinal sins. Those are the 3 central things a person shouldn't do. The breakdown in relationship between man and his fellow man, murder, man and God, idolatry, man and himself, illicit relations, you can't control yourself. So what happens is, this is what the text says. It says it's like an example of a king. He walks into the wine cellar and he tastes 1 barrel of wine. He says, this wine is sour. Then he tastes the second barrel. This is sour too. Third barrel, he says, it must be the whole wine cellar is no good. That's the example of these 3 generations. God said, all right, the people are not coming to find me. I've given 2,000 years. That's 1/3 of the time of the world. Because the world as we know it, from the time of creation of Adam, will be 6,000 years maximum, until it changes to another dimension of a higher level, like the 6 days of the week and the Sabbath. There are 6 days of the week, and then there's a Sabbath. There are 6 days of the world as it is. 6,000 years. Every day became 1,000 years, 6,000 years. And then the 7th is called the Great Sabbath, and that's when we move into a time of greater consciousness. So it says 6,000 years, 2,000, God said, I'm not giving the Torah, I'm not revealing myself, you come find me. That first 2,000 years, nobody did it. Nobody wanted to find God. Nobody chose God. Except for 1 person. For 50 points, Bernice. And the right to move on to double jeopardy. What's the answer? Abraham. That's right, Abraham. And I got to tell you something. I don't know. I got to talk to the guy in charge of the Nobel Peace Prize. But Abraham is definitely the guy you got to give it to. Post life one, because he changed the entire world, and people don't even realize it today. Because thank God today, most of the world in one form or another, are monotheists who believe in one God. But you got to understand that. Back in Abraham's time, he was by himself. That was it. The whole world were idolaters. His parents were idolaters. His father sold idols for a living. That's what he did. His father had an idol store. And Abraham, the young boy, had these great stories of what he did. What happened was he would go in and his father would say, watch the idols. He was a little kid, and there's a famous story that people walked in, they wanted to buy an idol, and then one woman walked in and he said, how old are you? And just, I don't know if she said, I'm 50 years old. She said, you want to buy that idol? That's a one-day-old idol. My father made it yesterday. It's like a little baby. You're going to buy that idol to worship? And he was chasing people out and like discouraging them. And then what he did was, it says, the famous story is he took a stick and he smashed all of his father's idols. That was all of his merchandise. That's millions of dollars in those days. Smashed all of his merchandise, and he left the biggest idol. And he took the stick and he put it into the big idol's hand. And his father came home and was freaking out. What happened here? He said, Dad, I gotta tell you what happened here. You're not gonna believe this one. A big fight started between the idols. They had a big argument, a big fight started, and then the strongest one stood up and destroyed them all. And his father said, what are you talking about? They can't talk, they can't walk, they can't understand, they can't do anything. Said, exactly. So why do you worship them? But he's a little kid. So you gotta understand the whole world was nuts. The whole world. And I'll tell you something, there's a word called Abraham HaIvri. The Ivri is translated as the Hebrew. Abraham the Hebrew. But there's a better translation, a deeper translation. The word Aver means the other side. It was talking about the land of Israel was called the other side of the Jordan River. But the word Ivri means to be on the other side. He's also called Abraham the Ivri because the whole world was on one side, and he was on the opposite side. So, I guess, who has the guts here to fight the entire world? If the whole, I want to answer your question. What's that?
I said I feel singled out here.
Right. Eric's wearing his fatigues. Those who can't see on Facebook land. So the reality is that I'll give you an example. I want you to imagine you went into a place, into a city, and everyone was walking on their heads. Everyone you saw was walking upside down their heads, and like as if it's nothing. That's the way they're walking. Everyone, the little kids, the butcher, the baker, everyone. How long do you think it would take till you tried to start walking on your head? Even Paul, you would do it because that's normal. You're abnormal. In society, if everyone's doing one thing, they had that experiment. Everyone's looking up in the sky, and if you walk outside, everyone starts looking up also. Yeah. We're social animals. The whole world believes one thing, and this one kid decides to fight the whole world. That's Abraham the Ivri, Abraham on the other side. It's a great lesson for everyone. Everyone should be able to stand up for truth, no matter what, even if it was against them, and that's the tradition of Abraham. So Abraham gets a Nobel Peace Prize for taking it back. I called up Bob Dylan before. He didn't want to take his. I asked him to send it over to Abraham. He's willing to do it. But the thing is that changed the whole world, because you don't even realize that, because today Abraham's beliefs of monotheism has spread out to the whole world. Okay, that's who he was, and that's why God said, "It's not that I chose you, Abraham. Abraham, you chose me." Okay, so now God said okay. So no, the world doesn't want to be God's representative. Keep the 7 Noahide laws. Abraham wants the job of doing it all. He wants the job. And again, we said many times, the 7 Noahide laws, the Jewish people have 613 laws. 613 laws with like 1 million different subsidiaries. So, a guy comes to me and says, hey, I want to become Jewish. I say, wait a minute. Do you want to have like 10 billion obligations from morning to night? You got 7. It's okay. So God said, the 7 laws that I told Noah, everyone does that, they're righteous. Abraham, you chose me, and therefore I'm going to give you the special job of representing me in the world. And then God said, okay, we're coming up to the holiday of Shavuot, which is this week. That's the holiday when the Jews got the Torah at Mount Sinai. When the Jews got the Torah at Mount Sinai, God offered the Torah to all the nations also. They had prophets in those days. However, there's different commentaries on how it happened, but he offered the Torah to receive God's commandments, 10 commandments and all the Torah, to all the nations, and people didn't want it. It didn't interest them. So they got another chance to take on the big yoke. And now, watch what happens. We say this. We say that if a person wants to convert and to grasp onto Abraham's tree, they could do that. They could become, Abraham became because Abraham himself is called a convert, right? Because he was family was idolaters, and he decided all of a sudden to find God. And he took a different approach. So somebody wants, they could convert and become a descendant of Abraham, take on the obligations of Abraham. And if they don't want, they don't need to. They can keep the 7 Noahide laws and be very, very righteous. So the idea of a chosen people is not at all ethnocentric. It's basically saying the reality of the world was that Abraham chose God and said, I'm willing to do this job. God gave the job to everyone in the world. You want to take it on intensely, you want to take it on a low flame. On a high flame means 24/7. On a low flame is the 7 commandments, and they're righteous and preserve the world. And whatever person wants to take on. Seems to be a very, very fair deal to me. Right? And I think it's a great thing, because you think about it, and in many, many religions, you can be as righteous as you want, but if you don't say X, Y, and Z, you're going to hell. And that's not what we're saying at all. We're saying that a person who is righteous, Jewish, not Jewish, a person who acts righteously, every person, every human being who acts righteously will have a portion in the world to come if they do their acts of what for them is called their responsibilities. And I get questions, comments, and feedback on what we said so far. Does it make sense? Not make sense? Any questions? We take them. And I'll even pop you on Facebook. I'll flip the thing so we'll see you. And we have any questions, comments, or ideas? Now everyone's shy. They don't have Facebook. No? Nothing? Nothing? Everyone's so shy today. Everybody? Victor, you're shy today?
No,
You're the werewolf
I
again.
do have a question.
Ah,
I do have a
that's-
question, but I forgot.
I've heard that one before. All right, think about it. You get what you tell me. Okay. So Abraham is the person who comes and takes this role. Now you got to get the picture again, because this picture is incredible. The Tower of Babel people, we learned about last week, were fighting God. They know about Abraham. They know about Abraham. Abraham is their arch enemy. As a matter of fact, the first of Abraham's 10 tests that he has is that when his father reports his son to the king, whose name was Nimrod, because his father didn't know what to do with him already. He keeps destroying their idols. So Nimrod says, bow down to the idols, I'm going to throw you into the fire. And that's Avram's first test, and that is not written in the text, written in our tradition. That was a miracle that flipped the whole world out. That Avram said, no, I'm not doing it. They threw him in the fire and he didn't get killed. And however that miracle happened, when he came out, people were flipped. And they brought their children to Avram. This is an incredible lesson. They brought their kids to Avram and they said, wow, you know how to act. God's on your side. Take my kid and teach him. Isn't that great? Is that nice? So Abraham said, what about you? I said, me? I got a game on today. I can't, I'm too busy. So no one, it didn't relate to them, but it related, it was like, but that's who we're talking about. So that guy who threw him in the fire, Nimrod, was the head guy in the building of the Tower of Babel. He knew about Abraham. Abraham left because he left his town because he was like a wanted man already, and his father took him and they left. They went to a place called Haran. They left from where they were in Mesopotamia called Ur-Kasdim. They went to a place called Haran because it was already a problem. Abraham was like, so they left. But what happened was the people knew who this guy was. this guy who was fighting the entire world. They knew him, they hated him, they wanted to get rid of him, and they were only comforted by one thing. They didn't know what the one comfort they had about Abraham. Even though they knew Abraham had God on his side and he was against them, they had only one comfort. You know what that was? Abraham and his wife Sarah were not able to have children. So what happened was they said, this thing's going to die with him. So just let him do his thing. We can't beat him. But eventually he'll die, and his whole vision of this one God and all this righteousness and goodness is going to be done. Okay? That's the backdrop. You got the story? So there's a battle here. I mean, this could be another episode of Star Wars. I mean, this is like so much better. But this is the battle of good and evil here. It is really it. The whole world's fighting this one guy named Abraham and his wife Sarah. Okay? Now, so what happens is Abraham is with his father Terach and his family, and they move to this place called Haran, which is like in probably Syria today. And what happened was God appears to Abraham in a vision, and he tells him, go leave your father's house. Go to the land of Israel. Now, there's no El Al flights, right? You don't just like get on a plane. It's not, it's not like that. Going to Israel was like a big deal. Picking up and moving and traveling, on your donkey, whatever you're traveling on, through desert. And all that. So God had him go to the land of Israel, okay? And when you go to the land of Israel, it's going to be good for you. I'm gonna change the whole world, and you're going to be the beneficiary of this. So he says, go to Israel. So Abraham says, yeah, okay, I'm listening, and I'm packing up. I'm going to the land of Israel. And he goes to the land of Israel, and you know what happens? Because it's going to be good, right? It's going to be good. I said, what happens is there is the first famine in history. Now, what would you say? God tells you to pick up, move, go to this place. You got a famine now. And what are you going to say? Like, I can't believe this. I'm ripped off here. Right? That's what you would think. You're like, I just changed my whole life. I uprooted myself. I got married. I can't even get a sandwich. I'm in Israel. I can't find a falafel any place. Right? That's what you would think, right? So Abraham doesn't say that. He takes it, not a word, accepts it completely. That's another of Abraham's tests. We're going to see he goes through 10 tests in his life. We'll see why. He takes it. He accepts it. But he's got no food, so he's got to deal with it. So what he does is he picks up and he goes down to Egypt. Egypt is food. Now, it's starting to sound really Jewish, like Jew going down to Egypt, and it is. It's a precursor of what's going to happen in the future. Because what happened was, when Abraham went down to Egypt, he didn't want anyone to go and to put their eyes on Sarah. He said he knows how they work in those days, and if he goes down with Sarah and they see her, someone might just take her and kill him. So Abraham does something very, very weird. First, he hides her in a box when he's going to Egypt. They say, "What's in the box?" Nothing, just some knickknacks, whatever. I'll pay whatever taxes on it. Now, open the box! Open the box! The box, and they see Sarah, and she's beautiful. And it's like, uh-oh. And they say, this one's beautiful for Pharaoh. Goes down, and he tells Sarah, he says, listen, this is really weird. I'm trying to figure this out. He says to Sarah, whenever people ask me our relationship, say I'm your brother. Say I'm your brother. And that it'll be good for me. And that's what happened. People were giving him gifts. It was really good for him. Now, that doesn't make any sense. That's what Abraham is trying to do. He's trying to pull a trick here. And he's telling everyone he's the brother, so they give him, what is he doing? What is that? Why does he want people's presents? Abraham doesn't like presents. We'll see later. You know why he did that? It was a plan. The plan was, in those days, when a woman got married, she didn't get married on her own. She had a father, an older brother, someone that married her off. That was the tradition in those days. So Abraham says, if I tell them I'm your husband, and they want to marry you, they're not going to say, hey, can I take your wife? They're just going to kill him, right? They're going to go, get an engraved gun someplace, and knows what they're going to do. But if I say I'm your brother, then they're going to come over, and they're going to buddy up with me, and they're going to try, and then I'll know who has their eye on you, and I'll be able to deal with them. Good plan, right? Good plan. It worked for everyone except for one person. Who? Pharaoh. They remember Pharaoh, because Pharaoh didn't have to ask. Pharaoh just said, hey, I heard about that girl, go bring her to me. And Pharaoh takes Sarah, and he has her. And now there starts to be a weird thing that happens. And the text is not so clear. What happens is Pharaoh gets ill, and he's not able to touch her. And he gets like these kind of plagues. And it's the forerunner of what's going to happen to the Jews when they go to Egypt. Because everything that happens to the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is going to be a forerunner to what's going to happen later. So Pharaoh says, hey, man, since she's been in this house, it's going nuts here. I'm not feeling like I can't touch her. Everything's going, he's getting like smashed. He realizes something's funny. And he calls Abraham in, and he says, what's going on here? This is not your sister, is it? He says, no, it's my wife. And he says, and he calls his people and says, get these people out of here. This bad stuff's happening. Get them out of here. And he gives Abraham and Sarah, gives them gifts and says, just go. And he gets his escorts, and they send them out of Egypt, which is actually a precursor of what's going to happen later. When the Egyptians say, go, 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 and they give the Jews the gifts to say go, that's what happened to Abraham as the precursor of what's going to happen later. Okay? Now, Abraham goes back to the land of Israel. And now we're going to start, I'm going to get interested in what we're going to be doing in the next session. But what he does is, he first of all, he comes up from Egypt with his nephew. He took his nephew, very important guy to see. His name was Lot. Lot was Abraham's nephew. He was his brother's name was Haran. Haran had two kids. He had Sarah, and he had Lot, and he married Sarah, and he brought Lot along with him. And we'll see the story of Lot, what happens, because Lot is Abraham's nephew, but he's going to get messed up. We're going to see that. But before we get into that, which we'll do that a little bit next week, but I want to tell you what Abraham did and how, when he came back to the land of Israel, how he decided to teach people about God. Okay, I want to tell you how he did this. This is what he did. Tell me if you like this system. He had it set up a tent, and he kept it open on all four sides. And he said, whoever wants to come on in. I'll give you a free meal. I'll give you a place to sleep. That was his style. And then people would say, wow, this is crazy. It's crazy, man. This is unbelievable. You give him all this kindness? He says, yeah. He says, yeah, because God gave it to me to share it with you. And they say, wow, you're not going to charge me? He says, no. There's only one charge. Only one charge. It was that. Thank God who gave us this food. If they did, great. It's not they got a bill. But he said, thank God. So all of a sudden, people are here, and you're talking about a time where people are like in their own worlds, and there's this guy who is giving kindness freely. He's talking about God. He's talking about all these things, about goodness and righteous and how to act. He's giving it away for free. And he wants us to talk about this one God. And he starts a revolution. And he converts many, many people. He gets a whole band of people that come to him. Because think about it. Think about it. If I could say to you that God gave me all this stuff, it's free, and I want to give to you just like he gives to me. And what you're used to a world of people cutthroat. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not even talking about 1,000 years ago. I'm talking about today. To think about, wow, gosh, God really loves me, and He gives, and to see the world in that kind of way, that's like a mind blower. Wow. So Abraham changes the entire world. There's this talk about, instead of these idols and this killing and fighting, there's this idea of there's one God. He created the world for a purpose, and you recognize your connection to God. You'll attain connection and spirituality, and it'll be awesome for you. He spreads this word, and people flock to him. And Abraham and Sarah together start this earliest revolution ever. And I wanted to tell you one thing now as a precursor to what we're going to talk about next week. And I've said this in other classes, but it's important to understand. I've been talking about this recently, but I need to repeat it again. You have two arms only, hopefully. Two arms. The right and the left. Okay? Let's say you're a righty, because most people are righties. If you're a lefty, just switch it around. You have a stronger hand, right? If you're a righty, you're a stronger hand. And you have a weaker hand. And the function of that is that in Jewish law, when you take your stronger hand, you do all of your beautiful deeds with your right hand. You give charity, you give it with the stronger hand. And that symbolizes that with my more powerful part of me, I want to be a giver. Right? So I want to give. Now, so a guy, I gave this example last time, a guy comes over and says, hey man, I'm out of money, could you give me some money? I need to go buy some new drugs. You're a giver. Here. No, you're not a giver anymore. If you give him, you're not a giver. You're harming him. So now you got to say no. That's your left hand. That's the weaker hand that says, can't do it. Not no. The answer is no. You can't have that. Okay, you got to get straight. You can't have that. All right, you know what I'll do is maybe I'll buy you dinner. But your weaker hand needs to be the hand to say no. And you need to balance always the right and left. You need to say, I want to give kindness. But if you really want to give kindness, you need to know how to say no for it to be real kindness. If you're a person that always gives, then you're the people pleaser person. You know what I'm talking about. You know who you are out there. So you never get out of it. Abraham was the natural giver, but to be only a giver, if it's not balanced, it's going to be harmful. So I told you God gave him 10 tests. All of those tests are going to be how to say no. How to use the left hand, the power of restraint, and say no. And that's Abraham's test we're going to see. He has to leave his old father. When he left his father, it was like, he didn't want to do this. He was like, what do you mean leave? My father. God said, I'm telling you, you have to go. It's really hard for him. Okay? Everything that he did, all of his tests now were like tests where he wanted to naturally give, and he had to say, God said, not in this way. Right? And we know the culmination we're going to see is to offer his only son. Only son from Sarah. That's like the ultimate opposite seeming of giving. That's the way a person has to come to the middle, the line of what's called truth. This is called chesed, we'll talk about it more later, chesed, kindness. This is called gevura, self-restraint. And this is called balance, which is called beauty and truth. And that's the center. And that's the way you function. That's why everything's in threes. You have one side, two sides, and the balance. That's where Abraham's going to come to. He's going to come to be the perfect balance through his challenges in life, which we're going through challenges. Every challenge we go through is to get us to be that ultimate person that we could be. Abraham, as the giver, had the challenges of when to say no. And we're going to see how he deals with it and how he's successful, and he becomes one of the greatest people. Him and Sarah become one of the greatest people ever in history. And that's going to be the culmination, the beginning of, we'll see, of the father, both of the Jewish people, and we'll see all the nations really come out from Abraham. Abraham really is going to see where the Arab nation comes out. We'll see eventually the Western world comes out. We'll talk about how that works. But Abraham and Sarah are the beginning of this new revolution of saying, all right, all these people for 2,000 years were barbarians. We're going to change it. We have the guts. We have the power. We're not afraid. We're going to talk about this. And they get people to come to them to go and to really start a new way to see the whole world. Okay, thank you in Facebook land. We'll take questions now. If you want another question, you have to come and join us live.
Yes.